Artivism is executive produced by ArtUp, hosted by Linda Steele, produced, directed, and distributed by Kazukian. You're listening to Artivism, and I'm your host, Linda Steele, and I speak to individuals who are working at the intersection of art and social activism. Today we have with us husband and wife, artist, team and duo, Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock of Brittney of Don't Blink and Jamond of Alive Paint. How are you guys today?
Whoop, whoop. Well, how you doing? Good morning.
Great.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you guys here, and we're just going to dive on into it. I understand that this is history today to have you both here at the table talking about this subject.
Damn time.
So tell me why that's history.
Well, so we are both individual artists, I guess, in our own right? We were artists before we met. And, I guess we could say that art kind of brought us together in a way.
Yeah, it did.
We met in a formerly known nightclub.
Yes. What was it, the Plush Club?
It was called the Plush Club on Bill Street.
Yeah.
And we were both there. Well, I know I was there because my friends were like, we're getting you out the house. Mm-hmm. And I think the same for Jamond.
Yeah, it was the same situation where both of our friends kind of like pulled us out of the house. You're not staying in tonight,
Yeah.
And
we were both lingering by the bar.
Yeah. And I think I met Brittney through one of her friends, who's actually an artist and photographer, Jasmine Bailey. And she introduced me to Brittney, and she was like, Brittney, you gotta check out his artwork. He just did an art show at Le Bon On, and
so we kind of we exchanged information from there, and
we talking to Brittney, and she just was like
kept in touch for a couple of years, and then we saw each other again at what was called Euphoria at the time, which was like a really kind of cool urban art scene for artists, musicians, and poets. And I was invited by a college friend, and when I got there, I saw Jamond was painting live. And I walked up and I was like, "You remember me?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Been looking for you. Yeah. That was like 2009.
Yeah.
Like the summer of 2009. And we've been seeing each other ever since then, you know. So.
Wow. And I hear you guys rarely ever appear together. So this is what, your first or second time?
Second time.
Yeah, because normally Brittney has something she's doing. If we appear together, we're there to support one another, but we're never seen in the same light, as far as the same production. So.
And I think that happens for a couple of reasons, right? I think that, the artist community here in Memphis, because, we're born and raised in Memphis, it's very tight and close. And so, like I said, we were artists before we met. And so a lot of people know us from before we were married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think, too, that our we approach our artistic practices very differently. We have our studio. We have separate studios. And so, we never lost who we were as artists when we got married, and so we just continue to do what we do.
Yeah.
And we share, I think, artistically when we're at home and when we're trying to figure out ideas, we do share that with one another. But at the same time, there's an ownership piece that we have with our artistic practice that may or may not overlap with one another, and we're totally fine with that.
So tell our guests a little bit about your art and your background. You want to start, Jamond?
Who I am, I'm Jamond Bullock, of course. I feel like art is my lifestyle now. So since I'm doing it full time, it's like I go to sleep thinking about art. I wake up thinking about art. And it's, consumed my life where, I once was an art teacher at one point, but my passion for painting has kind of like taken me away from from just teaching. So recently I just did something with the Civil Rights Museum where I did a partnership where we did a live painting, but it was 2 portraits of Martin Luther King on MLK Day. So my teaching experience kind of kicked in with directing kids to install like this large-scale portrait, these 2 large-scale portraits. Currently working on some projects with the OMG Gallery, Orange Mound Gallery. It's an amazing place if you haven't been there. Getting ready to start an amazing project with Sif and Sylv, and we'll be working towards doing a community conceptual mural. So, which means the community will have high stake in the concept of the design, and we'll have hands-on experience with working on the mural project.
Great. You do, so you're a portrait artist and a muralist, and you've done murals
Speed
all over the
painter.
world. And
Yeah.
a speed painter
Yeah, I mean, not all over the world, but I have art.
in all parts of the world.
I've had
Various parts of the world.
Yeah, I've had some art in Saudi Arabia, so which is crazy. I've never been there before, but yeah, I got into painting live through my friend Darius Fat Mac Clayton, who is a poet, and I met him, and he was just like, man, I really need somebody to come in and do some stuff on the spot at these poetry events. And that's how I got into painting live, and also through a mentor of mine, David Garibaldi, who kind of like planted a seed in me as well. But that's why lately you've kind of been seeing these paintings that I do in like 10 minutes. And got into doing murals through applying for projects through the Urban Art Commission here in the city. And the first large-scale mural I did was in 2013 at Bethel LaBelle Community Center, which is located in Orange Mound. So for me, it's kind of full circle to get another project in Orange Mound. It's an amazing opportunity to show or share my gift with the community again. And I feel like I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Fantastic. And Brittney, tell us a little bit about your background. And
Sure. So I went to college for fine art, and that wasn't the original plan. I grew up in a single family household, and I have an older sister as well, and it was just kind of understood in my house that, you know, you would go to college and obtain a job that was a little bit more stable, if you will. But I don't think that my mother thought that I couldn't be an artist. I just don't think that she knew of all the possibilities of what an artist could do or be. And so I started on a nursing path. I was a nursing major for about a year or so.
wow.
Brittney
And I was
has done it all.
I was doing a little, you know, I had started my my prerequisite classes in nursing. And I remember waking up for class one day and just like, was like, I don't want to do this. Nothing about this feeds my soul. Nothing about it is inspiring to me. And at the time I was, you know, painting. I had always been a painter. In high school, I did theater and art. And so I was still painting while I was, when I graduated high school. And so I applied to Memphis College of Art here and didn't tell my mom. And I got in with a scholarship, and so with a partial scholarship. And I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm going to art school. She was like, you doing what? And so, but I had to do it, right? I had to do it because it was something that I had became obsessed with. Art was something that I couldn't like put down. It was a part of me. And so I needed to feed that part. And so went to MCA for a little bit, transferred from there, and got my fine arts degree from the University of Memphis, and graduated as a sculptor. And when I graduated college, you know, you're on your own at that point. So you don't have a wood shop or the ceramic studio to help, you know, with the tools and to, you know, continue to pour into your craft. You are literally on your own. So I worked out of my apartment for years, not really working towards anything, but I just knew that I needed to be creating. And so Did that for a couple of years and got into jewelry making. And then a few years later, I taught myself how to sew. And I think now...
Self-made, self-taught, Brittney.
Now I'm using my sewing machine in unconventional ways, more to draw portraits. I was really a big fan of illustration, and I think using my sewing machine to draw portraits really helps me to, I think, get more into that illustrative feel of portrait drawing. So I do that now in addition to making functional leather goods to sell, but also those goods help promote social enterprises in other communities. So, I have, I think, a few different bodies of work that I tend to pick up and put down quite often, and depending on what I think my soul needs for the day, depends on what I pick up. So,
fantastic. You're listening to Artivism, and our guests today are Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock, and I'm Linda Steele, your host.
I'm Jamond Bullock of Alive Paint. I'm a speed painter. I'm an artist. This is my lifestyle. And you are listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network.
You're listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network. I'm your host, Linda Steele, and we've been talking to Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock about their art here in Memphis, Tennessee, and we're going to continue talking right now. Hey, Brittney. Hey, Jamond.
Hey. What's up, everybody?
So we've been talking about your art, both of your art and the way you practice here. So I thought one of the things that I really love about both of your work is really how you weave activism throughout your artwork. So I thought our guests would love to hear more about how you weave social activism throughout your art, and how would you actually define social activism?
Oh, wow. So I do it in a couple of ways, I think. I do make functional utilitarian goods to sell, and a portion of those sales goes to a visual arts program in Memphis. And so I think that is one way you can categorize activism, very simply. And I think activism looks different for everyone. I'm not the type of person or artist that is one of those with my fist up, in the crowd chanting. Not that is, or there's anything wrong with that, obviously. But I'm more of an introvert. I'm an internal thinker. And so I oftentimes am really contemplating on how I fit in this role of being an activist. So that's one way. I think the other way is it's actually driven by a quote that I carry with me. And it's a quote that Kanye West actually said, and who is very controversial, obviously. But Kanye West drops nuggets.
Not an introvert.
Totally not an introvert. But he does drop nuggets every now and then. And one thing that has stuck with me, I think he was given like this long, drawn out speech during like the VMAs or something, what Kanye normally does, but we love him, right? And he said, three ways to keep people impoverished are taking away their esteem, taking away their resources, or taking away their role models. And so I carry that with me, and that has been, I think, something that drives what I do in Klondike Smoky City, which is a North Memphis neighborhood here. And in that neighborhood, in partnership with Quincy Morris, who is the executive director of the Klondike Smoky City Community Development Corporation, I created a youth apprenticeship program for young people. And essentially, it's a program that employs young people to work towards a artistic product that promotes community change. And so we've piloted the program last year, and I think that is the other form of my activism, sharing my knowledge and skills with our emerging leaders and future. And how are you able to use art as a conduit to drive social enterprise, to drive social change, and to drive community efforts? So I think those would be my two ways in which I work as an artivist.
I really like what you're doing in Klondike Smoky City, because I see it as amplifying youth voices. Specifically, you work a lot with young girls, and that's really powerful in terms of amplifying young women's voices, as well as empowering youth in general, specifically youth from disinvested neighborhoods, empowering them through the arts. And I think it's very powerful. And as you said, it shows that activism doesn't have to be on the streets with the fist up and the signs. We certainly need that sort of activism, but there can also be a more quiet activism, which is just as powerful. Jamond, you're listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network, and I'm your host, Linda Steele, and we're talking to individuals who are working at the intersection of art and activism. Okay, Jamond. So we're talking to Jamond Bullock and Brittney Bullock, and we're really talking about social activism and how their art intersects with activism. So Brittney was just talking about her powerful work. Tell us how your work intersects with social activism and how you define activism.
Okay. I guess I kind of got started through my process of creating, actually. I want to say about a year ago, I was invited by a friend named Brad Wells, who recently passed away, to a mural peace rally in Nashville. And everything that we had to create had to deal with bringing people together. And I came up with a design called Peace. But in the design, I was working on this mural, and I only had like 2 days to do it. And within the design, it was these two guys shooting at each other. But inside of the design, there's one guy, he kind of looks like what you would typically think is a gang member. And he's shooting his gun and pointing it like a gangster, basically. And on the opposite end of the mural, you see this guy, he's like a white cop. And at the time, of course, what we see going on in our country are white cops or cops killing black males. So in this depiction of my mural, I created this design that they were shooting at each other, but they were shooting these peace signs at each other.
Wow.
So to me, I felt like I had an aha moment of, okay, this could be the cure of what's going on. It's just, bringing people together with love instead of, hate and, a war of what some people might want, separation. But I feel like, if we can show people, hey, you know what, it's okay to actually love somebody that looks different or talks different or, is not from the same neighborhood as you. So that's kind of how I've been trying to instill that concept in my work in some ways.
Do you have any idea how people received that work? I mean, it sounds very powerful to me, very compelling.
It was crazy because we're doing a mural festival, right? And it's about love and peace. And while I'm working on the design, people are like, what is he doing? These people are shooting at each other.
Wow.
And that was before they saw the peace symbols come out. So, actually, it was received really well in Nashville. And after that mural festival, I was like, you know what? I would love to do something like that here in Memphis. So I had an opportunity to do an art show at Crosstown Arts this past summer, and I kind of recreated that mural on canvas, and I can kind of show you. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
So you can see what I'm talking about visually.
Right.
So here's like the gallery on canvas version.
I see.
Of what that looks like. You know, you got two people from two different backgrounds. You know, one guy looks like a mobster or a gangster, and the other guy looks like he's like a police officer from like the 50s. And he kind of, people thought he was Donald Trump at one point. But that's not Donald Trump. But it's just showing you, you know, you can bring different worlds together. And I'm a firm believer of that, you know.
Well, it makes me think, hey, you know, this is great, obviously from Memphis, but what would it look like as part of a traveling show to places like Chicago or Detroit or where I'm originally from, Cleveland, Ohio, where there's a lot of crime going on. There's a lot of shooting. And as you said, people really do need to talk to one another. And getting something like this in front of those communities, which will prompt them to actually talk and bring people from those different backgrounds together. I think that would be fantastic.
I think that's an amazing thing. I mean, when I did that gallery showing here, it was received differently versus the process of people watching it, and they're like, okay, why is this guy coming to this peace rally kind of trying to start something? And that's what was going on. And, you know, it was all about love. And I when people saw those symbols, they were like, wow, man, I can't believe it. It was one lady about to cry about the peace because she knew what was going on to black males. And it's just something I feel like, you know, we can bring people together. A lot of times, if you can't be a spokesman for what's going on, you can do it in your own way. And that's kind of my way of being an art activist.
Fantastic. Well, you're listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network. I'm your host, Linda Steele, and I'm speaking to Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock, both artists, about their work here in Memphis, Tennessee. You're listening to Artivism. Artivism features conversations with artists, creatives, and citizens working at the intersection of art and social activism. And I'm Linda Steele, your host. I'm a grant maker, change maker, social venture capitalist, and I invest in individuals and projects that use the arts as a vehicle for social change. Listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network, and I'm your host, Linda Steele, and we're talking to Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock, who are artists, coupled, artivists, practicing right now in Memphis, Tennessee. We've been talking about their art and practice of art, but also their social practice and civic practice and how they weave those two together. And as we've been talking, one of the things I've been really wanting to talk to you about, and we've talked about this before, but talk to me about the challenges of being artists of color in general and working in the South and in Memphis, and what types of challenges there are. And then also going into today in a landscape where the National Endowment for the Arts funding is being challenged, and all sorts of arts funding is being challenged. Talk about what it's like to practice in this environment today.
I think I had my first, challenging encounter in undergrad studying as a visual artist, and I remember telling one of my professors that I really want to make work about my culture, right? About my experience and more importantly, the historical context of Black culture, right? And at that time, it was my first year as an art major, and I didn't have all the language, right, that I needed to really talk about it, but I was hoping and seeking that my professor would kind of lead the way. And I remember having that conversation with her, and she saying, "You're not ready for that."
Wow.
And she said, "You know, that's already being done. You're not ready for that. And is that really something that, you know, really piques your interest?" And she steered me away from it, quite frankly. And, you know, at the time, I was a little pissed off, but at the same time, I was like, well, I kind of thought, well, maybe she's right. You know, I don't know. And then from that point, I felt like I just really didn't get like the knowledge of what was happening culturally in Black communities that were led by art, right? There's this whole like context of information regarding civil rights and artists working in civil rights that I feel like I missed in some way or another until I had the opportunity to take a art history class at the University of Memphis that was devoted to exploring African American photographers. And it was at that point where my eyes and my mind opened to the many possibilities and the many African American artists who were making work about them. And what I realized at that point was that class was optional.
Wow.
It wasn't, it was optional and it was temporary, right? So, which to me is problematic. Although there are not very many, well, during my undergraduate time, there weren't very many Black artists. But at the same time, I needed that class. And had I not taken ownership to take it, I don't know where I would be now. And I learned about artists like James Vanderzee and Ernest Withers and Gordon Park, like all of these amazing people, like Sonia Clark. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And to me, that is a problem. I'm rooted in the South. I'm rooted in Memphis, where civil rights is a like the culture here, the like foundation here, and the fact that I may have missed that is heartbreaking in a lot of ways.
She was keeping something from you. She wanted to hold you from discovering something.
I don't know if she was actually keeping something from me or if she was just afraid herself.
You're listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network, and I'm your host, Linda Steele. We're talking to Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock and having a fantastic conversation about art and social activism. So we've just been talking to Brittney, and you've been sharing this incredible personal experience about your art and your history and your culture. I want you to just finish that thought.
Sure. I think that professor that I approached originally, because the assignment was during that time, pick 2 ideas that you want to focus your artwork on. And so my main focus was, you know, talking about Black culture and Black history within my art. And then I think my other focus was like nature. Very generic. It was super generic, right? But I think that she steered me away from that because she didn't know enough about it. And I think her job as a professor was to help cultivate what I needed, and I don't think she had the right skills and tools to do that or even talk authentically about an experience like that. And I think the other part of that too is that she didn't make time. You know what I mean? I feel like she could have taken a little bit more ownership of what that meant, but you know, regardless, I got the opportunity to learn what I felt like I needed to learn and to explore what I needed to explore around civil rights and equity and, you know, really just Black artists doing their thing and doing it well and doing it authentically and beautifully. And like, it was just an amazing experience when I did get the opportunity to take a class that focused on that. But, you know, I think being a working artist in Memphis right now, you come across those types of challenges and barriers unconsciously, I think.
Yeah,
Right?
you do.
I think sometimes it doesn't necessarily register that that's a problem until maybe months or years later, like, dang, that was a problem.
Exactly.
You know? And I think
See it all the time when you go into an art gallery.
yeah, as a working
like,
artist, you know, and living here and being from here, there are more things that I'm seeing as I'm learning more about opportunities and what's actually out there that is not promoting Black artists, quite frankly, or we're not in the space or not invited to the space.
Yeah. So like when I said you see it all the time when you go into a gallery, a lot of times, you know, you'll see an art showing at this popular location, and you'll be sitting there wondering, okay, there's a lot of people here.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
It's like 200 people here. And it's maybe like 3 Black people there at the show, you know, and you like, why is this the case? Like, we're in a Black neighborhood, and, you know, why are there no Black artists' artwork on the wall? And why is it just, you know, 3 of us being represented, you know, in this hood that I almost grew up in, you know? I just think it's one of those things, like we said, that's kind of subliminal. Like, you know, you don't really think to ask, why is this happening? Or is it that Black people don't support art? That's not the case, because we know tons of Black artists in Memphis. You know, it's just sometimes they're not being invited, or it's this tight-knit group of people that feel like, hey, we're only going to put our friends on, and if you're not friends, and you're not friends with us, or you don't look like us, maybe, you know, you can stay over there.
Given what's going on in the country right now, how do you feel about the future of artists and artwork and really the creative economy, you know, given what's going on with, like I said, the challenge with, I mean, everybody's worried about the National Endowment for the Arts and then arts funding in general. How does that make you feel, and do you have a plan?
I feel like, you know, even though I get some funding from grants, I feel like, you know, like that Kendrick Lamar song, Brittney referenced Kanye, I'm gonna reference Kendrick Lamar. You know, Kendrick Lamar said, we gonna be all right. You know, we've been going through this struggle for our lifetime, our parents' lifetime, our grandparents' lifetime. It's gonna be a struggle. But, you know, I'm up for the challenge when it comes to being able to create and, you know, live off of that. I think you can't let someone saying or threatening to take things away give you fear, because that's gonna grant them power. And, you know, I just think, you know, you got to continue to live the way you've been living and just keep it moving. You know, take that hit if something happens to your foundation or whatever organization you're a part of. Just keep continuing to move forward, because, you know, what they say, one monkey don't stop no show. So that's how I feel about that.
You're listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network. I'm your host, Linda Steele, and we're talking to Brittney Bullock and Jamond Bullock, 2 artists practicing in Memphis, not only their art, but both art and social practice and civic practice. And we're talking about art and social activism. I'm wondering, what, with all of the grit and grind people talk about with living in Memphis, and you certainly have that as artists as well and as artivists, what can artists learn from artists in Memphis around the country? So what can those people, those artists who are not from Memphis, learn from you guys, and, you know, what you're doing here to just survive?
Oh.
How are you guys different? Is it in the DNA?
No, I mean, I would say you have to believe in yourself. You know, find something that you love to do and do it, you know, and be consistent with it. surround yourself with people who are positive, that, you know, are dreamers as well, that are chasing their dream. I mean, you're going to get a lot of stop signs on the way, but at the same time, being consistent takes a toll on you, you know, continuing to be successful. So, you know, you have to be consistent, you know, believe in yourself, and, you know, surround yourself with some people that, you know, do quality things and are great dreamers, because it's easy for you to say, you know what, I think I'm just going to give up on this. But if you have somebody saying, hey, man, what you've been doing, you know, or Brittney, I love what you do. You inspire me. You know, that kind of keeps you moving.
I also think, too, that artists here, I mean, we're resilient, right? We are some resilient, resourceful individuals. And I think oftentimes that artists here are working from crumbs, like little to no resources, but are producing some of the most beautiful, socially engaged, cultural objects and ideas that I've seen, right? And what's so interesting is, you know, when you do step outside of Memphis and you experience art cultures in other places, it's very indicative of home to me in a lot of ways. Like, you know, when I experience what's happening artistically in Chicago, it's very reminiscent of what's happening here in Memphis. And I think that we as artists have trained ourselves to be steadfast. And we've trained ourselves to do what we can with what we have. And if I could share anything with any other artists outside of Memphis, I would say, you know, you have everything you need in you. Like everything that you possibly need comes from within. And the more that you become obsessed with your artistic practice and what you do and your passion and love for that art, it will get done. And carry that with you, and carry it with you with like a badge of honor. And regardless of who tells you that you're not good enough or you don't get the resources this time, because it will happen. You know, stay steadfast. I think the other thing that I notice here too in Memphis is that there is, I think some people feel like there is a need for outsiders to come into our space and to get things done, if you will. And it's I don't know, I feel a lot of ways about it, right? I feel like part of it is frustrating because we have so many talented individuals in our city who, if you just uncover them, if you just pull the veil back, you can see. But I also think that there's a need to kind of see some outside perspective to help further cultivate what we have here. But there's a way in which you do that. And I think that if you do it in a way to where you're actually not promoting the things that are here, then that becomes problematic. And when I think about like our current state of affairs and the National Endowment of the Arts, you know, being potentially taken away, like I have mixed emotions. I'm super, you know, it's just, again, frustrating. I'm angry. I'm sad because the NEA has done so much for me as an individual artist and has promoted me in so many ways that I don't think they even maybe know. And to have that taken away from me and my counterparts and my colleagues in the future, it pisses me off. Like, I am furious about that. At the same time, I'm hoping that our private sector here in Memphis steps up, right? And maybe steps up in a way to where, you know, they are funding grassroots things that they haven't funded before, which is where, in my opinion, the actual work happens.
Yes.
Or they're stepping up in whatever ways make sense for Memphis, right? And so you know, there's sadness in my heart for that, but there's also hope in my heart for it as well.
You got to keep that hope in you because, I mean, like just a little bit of doubt can kill what you feel inside. But at the same time, you know, if you have that doubt and transform it into something positive, you know, you can continue to go on your day to day, and which is for you, you know, planting seeds in these young ladies in North Memphis. So, you know, you can't let, you know, the funding may go away, but you can still continue to have these relationships with these kids.
Almost definitely.
Yeah, so, and it's the thing, it's like, you know, the funding may go away, but you can still have this relationship and still bring these kids around art and show them that, hey, you can be an entrepreneur and be an artist.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally agree with that. And, you know, for the record, NEA does not fund me.
But
note to the NEA.
Right.
This is a fantastic program.
Would love if they could. But, you know, just even aside from that, I think the NEA, what the organization or the institution has done for me is just, you know, just giving me the resources and the tools, the language, the like connections, the relationships, Linda, like, you know, just so many different things that I think that are direct and indirect in my artistic career and professional career. So, you know.
Well, Brittney talked about glimmers of hope, and I did want to kind of end our session talking about a little bit about some more of those glimmers of hope. This Artivism is actually produced and sponsored by ArtUp, which is the new name for all of the work that's been done in terms of providing a fellowship, providing social enterprises, and also community engaged design. We're going to be launching that like very soon. But if you could both end with some glimmers of hope, and I always love it when Brittney talks about the fellowship she received and how that's transformed her work and her outlook. And then also, Jamond, if you could talk about some glimmers of hope that are out there, I think that would be a great way to just end this session.
Yeah. So my participation in the fellowship has been one of the most incredible, inspiring opportunities that I've had, not only in my career, but also as an artist. I think it challenged me to think so differently than what I've thought before. And it also challenged me to think about my role as an artist. And I know that, you know, without the fellowship, I'm not quite sure if I would be equipped or have the foundation to even be courageous and do some of the community work that I do. I think, you know, our roles as artists, they play out very differently. And I think that I have always known internally in my heart that I am supposed to be using my knowledge and my artistic practice for good. And I think the fellowship awarded me that opportunity to explore what other artists are doing, to explore the possibilities, to explore the real shifts and changes that could be done by using art as a tool. And I think I mentioned that fellowship at least, you know, in every conversation I have. Not really, but like, I honestly don't know, and this may be woo-woo, I don't know, but like, I honestly don't know, like spiritually as an artist and in my craft as an artist, where I would be. Like, it's done so much for me. and providing just knowledge that I didn't have before. And it has been, I think, my job to continue that knowledge. Since leaving that fellowship, I haven't stopped learning. And I don't think I would ever stop. I will forever be a student in this realm because I'm so passionate about it, and it's so fruitful, and could really, I think, help eradicate social injustices like poverty if you really focus on it and you really understand the root of problems and how art can be interweaved in and out of that. It could eradicate a lot of things, and I truly believe that. And I think the fellowship has started me on that path, and has, afforded me that opportunity to learn more about what that means and looks like.
So what do I say after that? Brittney's gonna change the world and end poverty.
Oh no! With the help of everyone
all
else.
the artists, we're gonna do that.
No, I'm just joking. But yeah, I don't got nothing to say after that. No, but for me, I guess it's just inspiring people because I was inspired. So and not being afraid to share information. I know sometimes it's tough being an artist. You don't want people to know your secrets. But for me, I actually get inboxed a lot from various artists that are like up and coming, and I feel like I'm still up and coming myself. But if they have questions, I ask them, I answer the questions and just tell them and just straight shoot it to them, hey, this is probably what you need to do in this scenario. A lot of times artists don't know where to start as far as pricing. I just try to tell them, hey, whatever you feel is comfortable, but, don't give the art away. And even at the time and when I was teaching, I taught art for about 6 or 7 years. So, I would instill in my students that you could make a living doing art. A lot of the assignments I gave them were projects I had. So I was showing them how, you can potentially, make money off of a project that you learned in elementary school. So my thing was just showing them if you can create something like this, just by the time you're my age, just think where you'll be. So
a lot of like sharing of information, sharing of your gift.
Yeah, I mean,
just
it's okay
mentoring.
Okay to pass things along, And one of my friends, Brad, that passed away, he shared everything he did, and he was just like, man, every time I messaged him, he would share some knowledge. Man, you know what? You can probably do this with that, and and just try to be more open and loving with people. I think that's something to take home with you,
Fantastic. I would not be doing my job if I did not end this session with telling our guests how they can keep in touch with you, how they can look at your work, buy your work, support your work. So Brittney, where can people reach Don't Blink?
Website. So that's don'tblinkbb.com. I'm also on Instagram, and that is don'tblink_bb. Those two outlets are the best way to keep in touch with what I am doing artistically. So that's where you can find me.
And Jamond, how can people reach you?
I'm on Facebook I'm the only Jamond Bullock actually in the world. So JAMOND BULLOCK. That's me. And on Instagram, I'm Alive Paint at Alive Paint. You can find me there. And if you want to email me and you have questions about your art process, or you want to just hang out at my studio, email me at alivepaint84@gmail.com, and let's make something happen.
This has been inspiring, and you've been listening to Artivism on the Kazukian Network, and I'm your host, Linda Steele. You will find the Artivism podcast at the intersection of art and social activism. Artivism is executive produced by ArtUp, hosted by Linda Steele, produced, directed, and distributed by Kazukian.